The next speaker is Colin Campbell, and Colin's going to give us a presentation on the SaskPower Carbon Capture Chemical Laboratory.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you today about some of the things we've been doing in chemistry. It's been a very exciting project and a very exciting time to be a chemist at SaskPower. The conference organizers came to me a couple of weeks ago and asked if I could present here, and they sent me this. They sent me the title of this presentation: "Why SaskPower, a company in the business of power production and distribution of electricity, would enter the uncharted territory of managing a chemistry lab." So I said I'd be very happy to present here, but we have to change that title. We've been doing chemistry at SaskPower for over 50 years. We've been very active in a number of areas of chemistry. Chemistry here is important in all aspects of everything we do. I hope there's no physicists in the crowd, because I'm gonna come out and say that chemistry is the fundamental science. And as long as there's no physicists in the crowd, I'm probably good with that. Uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. Anyways, we do a lot of chemistry in areas of material sciences, steam and water chemistry, fuel chemistry, failure analysis. My lab in particular has been involved in all sorts of interesting failures over the years. Over 30 years we've had our lab running. Again, we've been operating power plants for a very long time. And of course, chemistry is critical to operation of coal-fired power plants. However, this move into clean coal, or ICCS, carbon capture, this is new. And this introduces some very new chemistries. And in particular, we're moving away from the traditional business of power generation into an area where we're now becoming a chemical supplier, a chemical producer, and we're going to be operating a full-blown chemical plant. So this has been a bit of a culture shock for us as a company, coming from a primarily mechanical engineering business of getting electrons into the grid. So this is where the new aspects of chemistry are coming into SaskPower. Moving forward here, building best practices. This is something we've been working hard on, trying to understand what industry best practices are for these types of chemical operations, managing issues that have come up in recent years. Again, this is fairly new, and a lot of these issues that have cropped up after the design of the plant was underway, or at least our awareness of them and knowledge of them wasn't there at day one. So we've had a lot of challenges to understand these things and what their real importance was, and how critical they were going to be to our operations. I have to take a minute here to really thank a number of collaborators here that have helped us, in particular TNO, TCM, and National Carbon Capture Center have been fabulous in helping to bring this, the knowledge base that they've collected around all of these chemical issues. And we've been over there visiting all of these facilities, and they've been just fabulous at sharing their information and really helping to bring us rapidly up to the level of expertise we need to be to ensure that we have control of all of these potential problems. So we've been constructing a new Amine laboratory specifically to support the clean coal projects. This lab is designed to look for very, very trace levels of a number of different constituents. It's really going to be a powerful tool in our toolkit for evaluating and studying carbon capture technologies and the performance of our both our ICCS unit and lending extra capacity and extra capabilities to our carbon capture test facility at Shand. So I believe it's really a very important part of the puzzle. We're set up a partially clean lab environment, be able to look for very, very trace levels of components. looking in both air and water samples, soils and sediments, vent gas. Vent samples are really, really tricky, and that's an area that our collaborators, NCC, TNO, TCM, have been incredibly useful, incredibly helpful. They've got a lot of expertise in these areas, so bringing that information to us has been of great help. So I want to talk briefly about nitrosamines. You've probably, if you're in the carbon capture business, you've of course heard about nitrosamines. They've been a big touch button in the media. We had this nitrosamine scare that occurred back in about 2008. And it's well known that nitrosamines are potentially carcinogenic material, so it's something of real concern. We want to make sure we're not emitting these things into the environment. In 2008, the TCM project had a lot of challenges from this discovery or this knowledge that nitrosamines are potentially formed in carbon capture systems. And the time the NILU Air Quality or the Air Institute published the NILU guidelines for controlling what safe levels of these nitrosamines were in the air, the levels were based on some very, very worst case assumptions about atmospheric chemistry, and there really wasn't much knowledge, much hard knowledge about how these compounds behaved in the atmosphere. And so the levels were set very, very conservatively. And this made for some interesting challenges, not only in meeting those levels, but also in measuring those levels. At the time the levels were set, there really was no technology available to even measure at those levels. So we started, when we heard about this, of course, trying to investigate how this might impact our project. And so quantification is really critical to refining this knowledge base. We need to be able to measure these things to understand them. I should point out that it's now 2014, and there's been a significant change in the knowledge base. There's been an enormous amount of understanding that's come out in the last 3-4 years regarding the atmospheric chemistry of these things. And I heard John mention yesterday that the byproducts are really not an issue anymore. We're certainly getting there. There's a lot better understanding now than there was before. Now, aerosols are another possible source of concern for us. There's been a number of incidents over the years. NCC and TCM have had some challenges with aerosol formation. These aerosols can contribute to amine slip. And so this was another thing we didn't have a good understanding of when we first started. So we wanted to, again, try to understand what the ramifications of this and the likelihood of this type of thing occurring on any of our facilities was. Again, we went to DCM and to NCCC to visit them and try to gather their expertise and their experience on this. These events can result in some significant costs and delays if they occur. So we wanted to understand how we could prevent them before they happened. So the research to date on these aerosol issues regarding slip has been pretty clear. There's a pretty clear tie between SO3 and the formation of these aerosols. So that's really good information. And it's good for us, we believe, because we have some unique coal chemistry at SaskPower. And our coals aren't the greatest quality, but they're low in sulfur and they're highly alkaline. And what that means is we don't have a lot of SO3 in our flue gas to begin with. And it's pretty adept at capturing the little bit of SO3 that is formed. So we really think that SO3s are probably not going to be a significant contributing factor to aerosol formation at Boundary Dam. Particulates are another area of concern. There's not as much known about this. Particulates here, where we're talking about very, very small submicron particulates. SaskPower has been applying proven technology for controlling larger particulates for many years now, and we have a good handle on that. But traditionally, most utilities, most environmental organizations haven't been concerned with these very, very small submicron particles. So there's not a lot known about them, and there hasn't been a lot of ability to measure them even until very recently. There's some new technologies coming out to allow us to go and look and measure these very small particles. And so those very small particles have a potential to contribute to amine slip, and that's something we're going to really need to watch. So in summary here, I just wanted to show some of the initiatives that we're working on at SaskPower. The main intent of my group is really providing this chemical support for all the CCS initiatives. We're focused on environment, health and safety operations, and research opportunities as well. And we really believe that we're going to make a significant contribution to the CCS community with this new laboratory and the new initiatives we're working on here. So I'm a little short on time here, or I wrapped up a little early, so if there's any questions, I'd open up the floor to a question.
Colin, are there any initiatives that your team is working on that will be shared with the broader CCS community?
Yeah, very, very good point, Max. Yes, we've been doing some very interesting work with the University of Regina, and we're trying to tie together some of the theoretical questions that have cropped up during our analysis of these situations, and tie them directly into our practical experience. So the U of R has been working to try to answer a number of those questions. We've got probably a paper coming soon from the University of Regina on nitrosamine formation mechanisms. And I don't want to go too deeply into that path because it'll put everybody to sleep. But there's really some interesting chemistry. If you're a chemist, we've got some interesting stuff coming. So I'd suggest keeping an eye out for some publications.
John, you've got it.
John Gibbons, UK CCS Research Centre. I think your point you made about the interaction between the coal and the
Yes.
capture system is very interesting. I wondered if you'd had any more, well, maybe it's not a fair question, but had you any thoughts about how other coals would actually interact? I mean, do you think it's just the sulfur content or the particulate or what? I mean, it's
I personally think that, like, sulfur content's definitely a factor. We've got a lot of background in studying sulfur in our coals. There's a wide number of things that impact how that sulfur behaves. And so it's more than just the sulfur in the coal, it's how it behaves and what are the other constituents in the coal ash and the fly ash in particular. And so when we look at these submicron particles that potentially may contribute to aerosol formation, a lot of coals are going to have small fly ash particles which are primarily acidic in nature. And they're not going to have a lot of strong interaction with SO3 that might be present in the flue gas. Our coal particles, on the other hand, are very alkaline, so they love to capture that SO2 and SO3. Yeah. In fact, we use that to our advantage at our Shan power plant now. We have about a 25 to 30% in what we call an inherent capture rate for sulfur. So we can actually reduce our sulfur simply by having it captured by the fly ash in the system and then removing the fly ash. So we really think that that's going to remove a lot of the risk from SO3 aerosol formations. Anyways, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no. I think it's one of the things that will become apparent as we get more into the field and get more experience with different coals, just what some of these subtle effects are.
It's very critical, and like we've been very actively involved in the ASTM over the years, and the main reason for that involvement was when we first started testing coal 40 years ago using U.S. Bureau of Mine standards and ASTM standards. They simply didn't work for our coal. Yeah. And so we rapidly discovered we needed to get involved with the ASTM and try to get them to incorporate lignites and low-rank coals into their tests. They were all designed for, eastern U.S. bituminous coals, good coals, at least good coals at the time. Now they're less popular because of their higher sulfur content, but it's really been a long road to get recognition for the challenges we face with our lignite coals because they are so different from the typical coals that people work with. So we're really interested to see how this affects the sort of the understanding or the consensus of how these aerosols form and these SO3s contribute to amine slip. And I think there's a number of things that have lined up for us that are going to put us in a pretty good situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see some interesting issues with biomass as well, getting into the same sort of area of alkali inerts.
I think we will have to stop there. I'd ask you to join with me in thanking Colin for his